This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Lifestyle by Design show with your host, Ben Handler, showing everyday people how they can turn buying property into a career.
Hey, dude, I just wanted to open up and say congrats on these 2 nominations for the Rising Star and Buyer's Agent of the Year.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you. Appreciate that.
How do you feel?
Tired. No, it's good. Obviously, I mean, it's always good to get recognition, not on a personal level, but more of a business level, because it shows that we're doing good stuff. But I take it more just on behalf of the team that we're doing good things. Clients love what we're doing. Industry's loving what we're doing, and we're obviously on the right path, which I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. How long has Atlas Property Group been going for?
Oh, we're around the 2-year mark. I think just a bit below, but coming up to around the 2-year mark. So it's sort of, it just goes from strength to strength, really, which is great. That's what you want it to be, but it means that you're always just busy on the go doing something. But when you love what you do, it's, you never work a day in your life. That's the saying, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess that's the goal, right? To be doing what you want to do and where it doesn't feel like work when you wake up every day. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll be happy to have a Christmas break though. Yeah, well, you deserve one. We were talking about that before, so I hope you take that off. So, man, you've been going from strength to strength. When did you actually start off with BAI? I forget. When was that? Was it 2 years ago? Or?
Yeah, it was around that, like 18 months, 2 years ago, around that mark. So it's obviously been a little while and big changes since then. But yeah.
Yeah, no, because I remember you had a fascinating story. You had a fascinating backdrop, and I know a lot of the listeners on this podcast who tune into SPI would be familiar with your background, and I guess some may not. But I guess for context for people who maybe are just dropping in on this and aren't maybe just give a bit of insight into your background, because I was, as I said, I was fascinated when I first heard it.
Yeah, so my background is that I was originally in the Navy. So I was a warfare officer and then a logistics officer in the Navy. And that was sort of my first really big job coming out of school. And that was obviously really fun and exciting. And eventually I outgrew that and I wanted to go and do something different. So I became a management consultant. So I worked for 2 big global companies, Deloitte and then Accenture. And then doing that for a little while was really good and learned a lot of really valuable skills, and was a great place to sort of transfer those things that you learn in the Navy in a military context, but be able to bring them into the business world, which was something that I always knew I wanted to do, but being able to actually do that was great. And then I started Atlas and, I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of what you cultivated in your time, I guess, working, in especially, I guess, the Navy, also, I guess, what you've, studied in your personal investing journey, I guess, it's no surprise it's helped you shape and build the dynamic and robust business that you have today, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the professional background is great, and it gives me a really different way to look at things. And I've learned a lot that I bring into business, I bring into buying properties for clients. But my educational journey has definitely also been just as important. And for people who have heard me talk before on SPI or Smart Property Investment or other podcasts, I'm always a really big advocate of education, whether it's formal and you talk about degrees or actual qualifications, or whether it's a bit more informal through things like the BAI or chat rooms or whatever it is, whatever form it comes, by educating yourself. I think it's so important. And for me, I have a business undergrad degree, but then I have a finance master's degree, and I also have a graduate certificate specifically in property investment. So for me, I think education is just so important, because it means you're on your toes, you're always critically thinking about things. And I guess from a business perspective, it really allows you to bring a different dynamic to clients and for clients, particularly on the property investment side.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, big fan as well of, I guess, the right education as well. And I guess my view on it is this, right? Sometimes the education that you consume, you digest, it may not pay dividends straight away. There may not be some short-term gain, but, it could be like a long-term gain where you're just like, wow, what I learned a year ago or 2 years ago is really now I'm seeing ROI, right?
Definitely. And education is definitely one of those things that you learn and you never quite properly learn until you implement it. I think there's plenty of listeners out there who have gone to TAFE or they've gone to university and they've learned things, and then they write it down for the test, and that's in one ear and out the other, and it's gone. But you don't see that value until you come to a situation in the future where you need that bit of education, and you might not necessarily know it, and you might have to go back to your books, or you might have to quickly do a Google search. But because you've learned it before, you pick it up in, a quarter of the time that it took you to learn it the first time. And then obviously you carry that on, because then that first time you've had to implement it in a professional context or a personal context. And it's no longer just a read about skill. It's now a learned skill and a practiced skill.
Yeah, I see that. And that makes sense. And how's your book going, A Military Guide to Property Investing?
Good. It's been awesome. I definitely never thought I'd end up writing a book, but here we are. And it's been fantastic though. Because we're in all bookstores, we're in all the online retailers, and the amount of people I have who get in touch with me and say, reading your book, it was like I got to know you as a person as well as obviously an investor before I spoke to you. So now when I'm talking to you and everything sounds exactly like the book, and you practice what you preach, I just feel like I know you to a different level than I ever could have if I'd never read your book or something like that. So it's been awesome.
Yeah. And I guess I think writing a book like you have, it puts you in a new position of authority. I guess you get to connect with your readers at a deeper level. And obviously they're reaching out because, they're recognizing that you are congruent with what you obviously say you do, and your backdrop, and then how you actually deliver and execute with what you do now, right?
I'd like to think so. I mean, it's certainly, it's hard. The book is now out there forever. Everything I've said in that book, and I'm sure when I look back in 5 years or 10 years, there'll be things in that I probably don't necessarily agree with or practice with anymore. But it's hard because it's literally out there and people can see it. You sort of feel a bit bare because you've just, you put out your methodology, you put out the way you think about things, and people can tear it apart. I definitely had, people who I thought were maybe friends or things like that, who once, they see you doing these sorts of things, and they can really just, they can sit there in the dark of their house and look at what you do and tear it apart. You realize very quickly that you're putting yourself out there on show, but it's the minority that look at it in such a negative way. And in the majority, people love it. The amount of great feedback we've had just from people who have said, I just knew nothing, and now I feel like I at least feel somewhat educated on it. I don't read a term that I don't understand. And for me, that's the best part of it.
Yeah. And, you're right. It's about value. And obviously people are, they're receiving value clearly, which I think is a really good form of feedback for you.
It's all about value, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're in that world now, right? Where, look at Gary Vaynerchuk as he's a clear, leader in the space of content, and, he's a big, advocate of, we're in this time now where you kind of have to give value, because there's so much information for free now that, if you're charging or whatever and you're not giving value, then it's a problem. Definitely.
If you go back, even 20 years ago, the internet then isn't what it is today. And there's been so many situations where people could be told something and they just take it on face value because there wasn't really a mechanism to go and look it up or view counter perspectives or things like that. It was so much, easier to have things like misinformation or not deliver value and stuff like that. Whereas now, you're right, somebody can just jump on, they can read reviews about you in 5 minutes. Sometimes they can even see some of your content. And if you're not delivering that value, I think you'll find very quickly that, people just won't resonate and you won't be doing a very good job.
Yeah, agreed. And I guess I wanted to lead into something else, So I've got a question, to ask you. I'm just curious to understand more about this. So obviously you've done a lot of study. You've been in the Navy, you've worked in corporate. So, you've developed all these amazing learnings. But since you've started your business over the last 2 years, right, you've authored a book, you've won 2 awards, you've been nominated on the board of Pippa. Do you feel like you have grown and transformed both personally and professionally a lot more since starting your business compared to being in the Navy, corporate, study, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when the buck ultimately stops with you and you can take things in any direction that you want them to go, it means that you've just got such a greater ability to grow, whether it's making decisions that you never thought you'd have to make, or whether it's making strategic outlooks on things that you never thought you'd have to make. I think it's impossible to not have that sort of transformative growth. I mean, for me, it's like when you're in those jobs, you're always so bounded, right? You've got a boss above you who's got 10 bosses above them going up, and you've got such a siloed amount of work that you've got to do and responsibility that you have for the work and things like that. But as soon as, particularly when you get into your own business, literally everything is on you. And sure, you can go and hire people, but at the end of the day, anybody you hire still works to you. Like, you're an accountant, you're a strategist, you're a lawyer, you're the professional of what your business is. Like, if you're obviously a buyer's agent, you're a buyer's agent. If you're a plumber, you're a plumber, but you're the professional of whatever your business is. And all that stops with you. And like, I could go hire an accountant in-house to come and do my books for me. But at the end of the day, they're still going to report to me. So you wear all these hats and you do all these things. And I think it's impossible to not grow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm always curious just to ask that question, especially to young entrepreneurs like you, because I feel like there's not much of it's really hard to compare, because I came from corporate. I studied at university as well, and I did all that. And when I started my first business, I mean, I just grew so much. And I've always just been curious to see if other people, because that's obviously from my perspective, but I'm always curious to ask entrepreneurs that question, because I just like to understand, like, did they go through that as well? Because my whole life, it seems like my whole life had changed so quickly when I did all that, you know?
I think it makes you think about things differently as well. Like, for example, when I went to start Atlas, I had nothing. I didn't even have a name. Then I came up with the name. And then I'm sitting there and I'm going, like, all right, well, what's next? And you go, okay, well, I got to come up with a logo, and I've got to come up with colors, and I've got to come up with a website. Then I've got to work out how to get business, and I've got to work out an accounting system. And I've got, like, there's all these things that come. And when it's the first time that you're doing anything, obviously your growth is going to be exponential. And I think a lot of people, they get into the trap of thinking, like, I don't know how to do this. I've never started a business before. How do I start a business? And they go, it's too hard, right? And they move along, whatever business it is. But when you eventually take the leap and you do it, and I think it sort of leverages off what you were just saying, the first time you do it, it's so hard, right? You don't know anywhere that you're going. You don't know what you're doing. You fumble your way through. But after that, you're like, okay, well, I now know what happens. So when you go to make a second business, you go, okay, well, I know some of these steps I've got to get through. You've probably got a contact or two that you've used from your first business, and it becomes so much easier the second time. And then even more the third and the fourth and the fifth after that. And I think that, I guess, going off what we were talking about before with that transformative growth, that it's impossible to not grow, because when you do things for the first time, you learn so much. But then after that, you get to reinforce them and you get to do them better. Like, now I know, all right, if I go build another business, I know the things I've got to do. I know how much I should pay for somebody to build my website. So when I'm talking to somebody, I know if they're having me on or they're not. And you just learn so much from that,
Yeah, it's a good point. You're right. Like, you're much better prepared for your next business venture, because, you developed all this knowledge, right? Where people can't screw you over. I'm not trying to say they always will, but
I know.
Hey, what was the tipping point for you? Like, what was the actual tipping point for you to get out of everything that you were doing to become an entrepreneur?
It's a really good question. I don't know if I have a great philosophical answer for it.
That's okay.
What was it? I think, look, for me, I think it was, I always wanted to have my own business, right? Like, or at least I always thought that I wanted to have my own business in some regard. Whatever it was, I didn't know. But I always thought at some point in life, or in my life, that, I'd be doing my own thing. And whether that's because I'd risen to the top of a company and I was, maybe not my own boss, but like I was effectively at the top running what I wanted to run, or whether it was going off and starting something, I think I'd always had that feeling inside me. And obviously I always loved property. And I don't know, I reckon I honestly almost just woke up one day and I'd seen maybe something on Facebook, or I'd just been looking through realestate.com, and I just kind of went, well, why not? And then, pretty much just followed the bouncing ball from there and got everything going. But yeah, I wish I had some really big, like, I don't know, I lost the house and I had to find a new way to do it. And then I came across this, but I don't, I think it's just one of those things that sometimes I feel like you just know, and that you have a certain path that you want to take in life. And then one day you just kind of wake up and you're like, all right, let's get to it. Let's get it going.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's no right or wrong answer. I guess some people have an epiphany, some people don't. I guess you always clearly you have had an intention for a while to start your own thing, which I think is impressive, because, you know, there's some people who just they can't even imagine or conceptualize around starting a business. But, you know, you've obviously experienced, you know, running a business. There's a lot of volatility of challenges. It's a roller coaster. A lot of people from the outside don't see what, as entrepreneurs, what we put in, right, to get it going. But I don't think personally it's that difficult. And that's, again, from my perspective. Like, I don't think we're trying to solve some world problem. I know some businesses are specifically doing that, but I think for businesses that aren't focused on that, like, it's not that difficult. And I think if you, as you said earlier, if you've got the right education, the right support, mentors, or I guess inner circle of people to guide you, you can make it happen. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think there's a bit of like a spectrum of it, right? Like, I think a lot of people sit back and they go, I'm going to start a business, or like, I might want to start a business. And they think that they've got to make the next Uber or Facebook, and they've got to be the next unicorn. And they think that, like, you know, that's the perspective is, if you're making a business and you're not trying to get that $1 billion valuation, what's the point? But what people forget is, what's that? 9 zeros. There's 8 zeros, or there's 9 zeros between none and the $1 billion number, right? And you can have a business that's worth $1 million, $2 million, 10, 20, 100. And there's a lot of steps that go to from there. And whether or not you're trying to make the next Uber or Facebook, I think is so unimportant. And sometimes it's just better to be in it and have a go. Like, I mean, look at the amount of people who start trades businesses. Like, a lot of them make great money, but it's not like any of them are about to become the next unicorn. But people make exceptional livings, great lifestyles, and they do it out of that. And I think that people sometimes forget that you can do it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, I think so many people are focused on outcome and not process. And, you know, and I think you just got to make that first step, which is, you know, as you said, like, you come up with a business name, then maybe register a business, and then, you know, get maybe a website or whatever the sequence is. But I guess you just got to take these baby steps and, I guess, have the right people in your corner to help you through it, right?
I got told a great saying, coincidentally in the Navy, but I definitely didn't come from there. And it's the way I try to look at everything that's big that I do. And it's, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time. And it's the same thing. Like, whether you're starting a business, whether you're working for somebody else and you've got a big project, whether you're like, I don't know, you've got something going wrong in your life, maybe you've got mountains of debt and you're like, how do I get out of this? Whatever it is, anything that seems too big to be solved or achieved isn't. You just got to break it down. You just got to make one small step, right? You take one bite, and then you take your next bite, and then your next one. And then eventually, if it's worth it, you'll get to whatever, you know, solution or end state or goal that you're going to get to. And I don't think it needs to be any more complicated past that, because it's not like you're going to do it faultlessly, and it's not like you're not going to waste money on things that you know, probably shouldn't have. Like, all those things are going to happen. Just accept that and just start moving along the process, because you'll feel a lot better about it.
Yeah. You know, what I love about the model that, you know, obviously I'm not a buyer's agent anymore, but at CH, when I was running that firm, like, we had offices in a lot of states, and I guess our model wasn't remote that we were running for that business, right? But obviously, since selling out of that firm, I, you know, see a lot of companies, and I've helped a lot of companies obviously become remote to reduce overheads. And I think it's such an exciting part of where we are today in 2021 is being able to run a remote business. And if you want to have an office, cool, there's no issue with that. But I guess with especially you running a national investment business, like, you could effectively go to New York tomorrow, and obviously that's a pretty bad time zone, but let's just say we're maybe in Southeast Asia. You could run your business well from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coincidentally, we're talking about this. I've literally just opened a brand new office in North Sydney, but no, you're absolutely right. And like, I think that COVID has not only done wonders for people who work in corporate Australia or corporate America or anything like that, to show that there's not that many jobs that you can't do remote if you put the right processes in place. But even as a business owner, absolutely. Like, all that you need to, you just need to have resilience. You need to have good systems. You need to, you know, be upfront about it. Like, for example, when there was a period that I didn't have an office going, because I had one before this one that I'm in now, but when there was a period where I didn't have it, I once had a client who said to me, like, hey, can I come meet you at your office? And I literally said, look, I'd love you to, except the thing is that my office is my house, and I don't think that that's very appropriate to go on. But I don't need to have an office, right? I travel, I go out and I meet clients, I do things like that. And then the next time I was on a trip, I think he lived in Brisbane, and it was pre-lockdowns this year. I said, look, I'm actually coming on a trip in a month. We'll sit down then. And he was like, okay, that sounds good. And people get it and understand it these days. So it's not even taboo anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, it's so like, there's so many big companies. Like there's a dude from the founder of WordPress, Matt Mullenweg. Like he's a very successful tech entrepreneur. Like, I think all his businesses that he runs, like I think in WordPress, he's got like 1,000 employees in 77 cities, and it's all remote. There's no offices. Like it's a no office environment. And I think there's so many like awesome businesses that are running that are remote. But I think specifically the buyer's agent business, it's a cool business. And I think that you must be getting very satisfied just helping your clients, right? Like build these robust portfolios, right? Like it must be gratifying.
100%. I think the most favorite type of client I have is like the younger person or the person who might have an interesting story behind them, or you can just see that they've worked hard and they're now in a position where they can start to build their portfolio and to help them do it. Like so many of those people come to me and they don't even have a goal in mind. And I'll literally say like, hey, what's your end goal? You know, do you want to have a $10 million portfolio? Do you want to have 2 properties? Like, what is it? And these are the people that go, I literally cannot tell you. I just want to start building out a portfolio, and being able to take them on that whole journey through it. And, you know, you get them there first and you get them there second, you help them map it out, you do all those sorts of things. To me, those are the people I love the most. I've got plenty of people who I work with that have a lot of money and they just go, here's my money, buy me a property. And it's very transactional, and that's okay. And like, that's fine. Of course I love working with those clients as well. But from a business owner perspective, yeah, when you get to just work with some of those people and sort of help them build that portfolio from nothing, and also help them learn, like it's, you know, I don't sit down with a whiteboard and go, you know, welcome to your TED talk for the day or anything like that. But just seeing them learn and grow, and suddenly they've got this confidence. Like I had this one girl, and she didn't know whether she should invest or buy an apartment for herself to live in. And we talked through her situation, sort of where she wanted to get to. And I said, look, I think investing is going to be the best decision for you. And she actually worked in risk. So she was a very risk averse person. She didn't really know much about investing. And by the end of the journey of just that first property with her, she's sitting back, like throwing technical terms at me, asking me these questions, asking about the next things. And I was like, you are a different person completely to the one that I met 2 or 3 months ago when we started this journey for you. And I think that that's one of the best things that we get to do.
Yeah, it's and especially now, right? Like with the market it's a strong market, you could say, and so you know a lot of people will be seeing upside in their equity positions. They'll be manufacturing some good equity, and they'll be able to then start building out their portfolios, right? So I guess you'd be witnessing a lot of smiles on faces right now, I'm assuming.
There are a lot of smiles, which is good. You know, it's good. I think one thing I say to everybody is you've got to remember that this is not going to last. Like, as much as being in the investment property side of business is my thing, and it's impossible to say that there wouldn't be a downturn in business once the market starts to normalize. People need, I'd much rather be open and honest and pragmatic with people to say, like, you should still be investing today. You are still going to end up, from a long-term perspective, better by investing today rather than tomorrow. But you also got to understand what's going on here. And it's that we're not going to have 20% growth every year until we all die in, 80 years or 100 years or whatever it is, right? So it's one of those things that I think people always need to remain informed about, Don't jump in with your eyes closed. Yeah,
it's good that you're giving that, not advice, but you are bringing awareness to that, because this is a market that I haven't experienced such a bull market like this in my time, and I think it is very rare. But yeah, it's good for people to know that it's not going to continue like this. I mean, who knows? No one's got a crystal ball, right? No. Who knows when it's going to stop or how hard it's going to hit? No one's got any idea.
I mean, just look at all the headlines from 2020 pre-COVID, so like circa March or Feb of that year, and banks were pretty, they were excited about property, but they were saying, it's going to be a good year, but it's not going to be anything exceptional, like maybe you hit a 7% or 8% in Sydney, maybe something like that. Don't quote me on those numbers for anybody listening, but banks were pretty, they were happy. They were like, this is gonna be all right. COVID hits, we're going to see 30% dropouts.
Yeah.
Reverses, and we've seen, and I think I just saw the numbers come in recently that we're up like 23% nationally for the year, right? It's just gone the complete opposite. Now everyone's predicting how it's going to go down, and we're going to, swing out maybe 10 or 15 or 20% over the next couple of years. And look, I think, world according to me is obviously the market's not going to last. I'll be very surprised if we end up seeing some of these 10 or 15% swings that people are talking about, because that's a lot, right? And if people who have studied the property markets will probably know this, and for those that don't, like, you can look at things like COVID, the GFC, the recessions that we've had in previous years. Markets don't really tend to drop out like that. Like the Australian market is very different to, say, somewhere like the US. We have a lot of resilience. A lot of our household wealth is based on real estate. A lot of national wealth as well. Like you look at the banks and things like that, it's based on real estate. So the market has been set up for decades to the point where it doesn't operate like other markets like the US, where if you said we're going to have a 20% drop, it's very plausible that could happen. So I think that people just, I'm always open and honest with people. Often to my own, I sometimes say often to my own detriment, but I just have those open and honest conversations with people, and I think I find that the smarter people, they just listen and understand that, right? They don't go, oh, I'm scared now, or I don't know what's going on. They just go, okay, it's information to take on and then process.
Yeah, well, it's good that you have those. I mean, and I'm sure your clients will respect like those style of conversations, right?
I hope so. Like, I had a client today who called me before. He wasn't even, he's actually not a client, and he's not going to be a client. And he wanted to do some certain things. And I basically said to him, like, look, you know what? I think in your circumstance, what you're looking to do actually makes a lot of sense. You're going to make money out of this. You're going to do well. Think about these couple of things, but I can't join you on this journey for these reasons. And he literally said, he's like, look, I appreciate that. I know that we're obviously not going to work together, and, I'm not going to, he's not going to be paying me or anything like that. Like, I'm not going to get any business out of it. But he literally said, I have a lot of respect for you for what you just said, because it reaffirmed what I was going to do probably anyway. And the fact that it's against what you normally do, and you're not trying to sell me on what you do, I have a lot more respect for you. And that was a nice moment today. So
yeah, it's good. I mean, it's crazy to think though, like I think it was like 1989, I think like rates were like 17%. I think inflation was like 8%. Like they were insane. That was insane times, eh?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, here's hoping we don't get back to that. I don't think that we will. But it's crazy. But people have a short memory. Like, think about the amount of people who were, say in their early 20s in the 90s. Well, what are they now? 30. They're in their 50s now, 50s or 60s now. They're not that old. A lot of them are probably still working. I mean, we see it every day how retirement age gets pushed out. People feel younger and healthier at older ages every single year. And I talk with people who forget what it used to be like. And people have a short memory. Markets have a short memory. It's crazy. 1 year or 2 years goes by and people forget.
Yeah, very, very short memories, dude. I agree. Hey, Lach, it was awesome to I guess have a nice chat with you, and it's great to see how your business is pumping, and good luck with those 2 nominations for that Rising Star and Buyer's Agent of the Year. I mean, they're 2 awesome nominations. Great to chat, dude. That was sick.
Thanks, mate. It's good to sit down again.
Yeah, and for all the listeners, if you're listening right now, I know it's kind of mid-December, or it could be a bit over that when you listen to this. If you're looking to change career, I don't know, you might be just reconsidering what you're doing. You might be looking for, I don't know, a bit of a more remote style of business, passionate about property, and you might be in healthcare or something. We're going to open up 5 positions for the scholarship program for this month. So just if you go to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au and you click podcast, and then you scroll down to Lifestyle by Design, and you put your details in and select the keyword scholarship. If you're in the first 5, then we'll run you through how that works. And if you want to learn more about the Buyer's Agent Institute, please visit www.buyersagentinstitute.com.au and play around there. And yeah, for all the listeners, have an awesome Christmas. Take care.